On her birthday celebration, I presented my mother with a gift of 10,000 yen, while my younger sister Lily gave her a gold bracelet. During the festivities, Mom remarked casually that, also, Lily always seemed to understand her best. She had given me the bracelet I had long desired, despite previously telling me over the phone not to purchase any more jewelry for her, since she already had plenty. I believed I was accustomed to feeling overlooked, but this time it truly affected me. I withdrew the red envelope from Mom's hand and said, "If you don't like it, you don't have to accept it. I won't give you anything else." The room fell silent, and all the relatives exchanged awkward glances. Mom forced a smile and responded, "Oh, come on. You're all adults now. There's no need to get upset just because I complimented your sister." I nodded solemnly and replied, "Yes, I'm upset and I won't forgive you." With that, I stood up and left the house. Outside, it was damp from the rain, and the air felt invigorating. I inhaled deeply, but the lingering years of resentment weighed heavily on my heart. My sister was 2 years younger and had been frequently ill during our childhood. Due to Lily's constant illnesses, Mom favored her, often telling me to let her have her way. This favoritism persisted for over 2 decades. I wandered without direction, and soon, light raindrops began to fall again. I didn't have an umbrella and wasn't bothered to seek shelter. Passing by a maternity clinic, I noticed couples coming and going, many with young children in tow. Some kids were energetically jumping around, while others were nestled in their parents' arms, all smiling. They had no idea that the arrival of a sibling could drastically alter one's life. When Lily was born, Dad and Grandma took me to the hospital. Before her birth, I was the center of Mom's attention. Before entering the delivery room, Mom gently asked, "Are you excited, sweetheart? You'll have a cute little brother or sister soon?" I nodded, clueless about what it truly meant. Did it mean I would have someone to play with? Grandma grumbled disapprovingly, hoping for a brother instead of a sister. Mom ignored her, and we waited in the hospital corridor for what felt like an eternity, so long that I fell asleep. In my dreams, someone in a white coat hurried over and whispered something, and Dad and Grandma quickly followed. They left me sleeping on a chair, forgotten. When I awoke, the corridor was dimly lit, and I felt utterly alone. Fear consumed me, causing me to tremble uncontrollably. I only dared to cry silently, terrified that shadows might conceal monsters that would hear me and come to attack. I can't recall how much time passed until Grandma arrived, muttering angrily, "Another useless girl." I immediately stopped crying and clung to her clothes, afraid she would abandon me again in her anger. Inside the brightly lit hospital room, I longed to run into Mom's arms. But Mom was embracing my newborn sister, smiling warmly as always, yet her eyes no longer held any affection for me. She didn't even glance my way, entirely focused on the tiny baby. After Mom brought Lily home, she had intense arguments with Grandma. Grandma, who had promised to help with the baby, returned to her hometown, leaving Mom to care for Lily alone. Dad was occupied with work and couldn't assist during the day. With no other options, Mom eventually brought Grandma over to help. However, Grandma had to attend to my uncle's newborn son and left as soon as Mom's recovery month ended. From that point on, Mom never seemed genuinely happy again. She was either occupied with household chores or holding Lily, who would cry whenever put down. Mom no longer had time to play with me or narrate stories. She didn't even bother styling my hair, simply cutting it short, despite previously telling me I looked like a princess with long locks. I wept bitterly, and Mom coldly instructed, "If you want to cry, go outside. Don't wake your sister." It became clear that having a sister had irrevocably changed Mom. For the next 2 decades, this reality was continuously affirmed. Exhausted from walking, I randomly entered a cafe. I took out my phone, which was on silent, and saw numerous missed calls and hundreds of messages. It was obvious that Dad, Mom, Lily, and probably other relatives were trying to reach me. The phone buzzed again. It was Dad. I answered, "Hey, what's wrong with you today? You argued with Mom on her birthday and then left. How could you be so inconsiderate?" I responded coolly, but being thoughtful had never yielded any rewards. I had prepared the cake and food, given Dad a red envelope as valuable as the bracelet. Yet, did Mom ever thank me? Dad hesitated before repeating the familiar refrain, "As the older sister, you should take on more responsibilities at home. Don't hold grudges against Mom or Lily." Tears began to flow as I choked up. Did I ever choose to be the elder sibling? Did anyone ask if I wanted this role? I was told repeatedly as a child to let Lily have her way. From the age of 2, Lily was fragile, often feverish or coughing, necessitating hospital visits. When I started kindergarten, I was frequently the last one waiting, eventually being taken home by a kind neighbor. Home was empty, and I waited hungrily for the adults to return. There were no chocolates or cookies anymore. I was told that seeing me eat would make Lily cry and crave some, but she had bronchitis, and the doctor advised against sweets. To avoid any fuss, Mom eliminated all treats. She would come home with Lily after they ate, exhausted and too tired to cook. By the time Dad prepared dinner, I was starving. I envied Lily, who was satisfied by Mom outside and never went hungry. I learned not to throw tantrums, fully aware that Mom wouldn't comfort me. After kindergarten, and before Dad was transferred elsewhere, Mom couldn't manage 2 children, especially with one always ill. So, they sent me to live and study at Grandma's house. As a timid child who cried easily, I found the relatives at Grandma's house to be strangers I had only seen a few times. I vividly remember the moment Mom turned to leave. I clung to her shirt, crying and pleading, "Mom, please let me stay at home. I promise I won't trouble you, and I'll help look after Lily." Mom frowned and loosened my grip. "Stop fussing. Your sister is waiting at the neighbor's. You're not going to be mistreated here. Don't be so dramatic." She didn't understand, or maybe she did, but couldn't help it. A terrified 6-year-old felt petrified being sent to an unfamiliar place. Grandma's house had 3 floors and numerous people. My grandparents, an uncle and his family, an unmarried uncle, my cousin who grew up there, and later a divorced aunt with her daughter. No one bullied me. Everyone treated me kindly. Yet, I was unhappy. No one favored me. My cousin was Grandma's favorite, always cuddling with her. My uncle's son was their golden child, and my cousin had her mother to spoil her. I felt utterly alone. Whenever something upset me, I'd hide on the stairs, crying quietly. Once the tears dried, I'd face people again with a smile. Initially, Mom visited weekly. I'd excitedly share school stories, while she half listened, often complaining to Grandma about the challenges of raising Lily alone. Over time, her visits became less frequent. Sometimes only every 2 or 3 weeks, she'd say, "Lily's sick again. Be good and don't cause trouble at Grandma's. Study hard." I obediently agreed, fearing that if I misbehaved, she might stop visiting altogether. I stayed at Grandma's for 6 years, rarely returning home for summer or winter breaks, as Mom claimed she couldn't manage. Only during holidays did the family gather. Before starting middle school, Dad was finally transferred back home. He took me to our familiar yet strange house. Lily was already in 4th grade, her health much improved. As I entered, she was having a tantrum, saying, "I don't want to share a room with Lily. I want my own." Mom tried to soothe her, saying, "Lily can help with your homework and take care of you." I felt uneasy. Was bringing me back solely to take care of her? Mom kept reassuring her with promises of taking her to KFC. Only her, not me. But I wanted to go too. Why not? Over the years, my parents hadn't taken me out for a meal alone. I looked to Dad for support. He coughed slightly and suggested, "Let's bring Becky too." Mom rolled her eyes at him. I finally managed to calm Lily down. "Don't mess it up," Mom said, giving me an impatient glance. "Fine, I'll bring you something back. Just organize your stuff here." I nodded obediently and waited at home for what felt like an eternity. After what seemed like forever, Dad returned from lunch, but they still hadn't come back. I was starving, dreaming of a hearty meal. When I heard the door open, I rushed over. Mom handed me a box casually. "There's a burger inside. Eat it." Just a burger? That was disappointing. Opening it, I found the burger was cold and had a bite taken out. I was stunned. Was this leftover food packed for me? Dad noticed my distress and approached. I showed him the box with tears welling up. "Dad, the burger's been bitten," Mom replied indifferently. Lily wasn't full and took a bite. She made a face, and I wanted a bite too. So what? If you don't want it, give it back. I couldn't hold back anymore. I pushed her hard. "Why can't I have my own room? Why didn't Mom take me? And why did you bite my burger?" She fell heavily and began crying loudly. Mom slapped me, shocked. "How dare you push Lily?" I screamed back. "Am I still your daughter? You only favor her?" Mom tried to hit me again, but Dad intervened. I stood there stubbornly as Lily cried hysterically. Mom, furious, stormed to her room, and Dad hurried to calm her down. No one seemed to care that I was still hungry. After a moment's hesitation, I walked to the kitchen and shoved the burger into my mouth. The cold chicken was no longer crunchy, and the bread was tough. It tasted odd, but I ate it bite by bite. This was mine. I wouldn't let her take it. After that confrontation, Lily's behavior softened. Dad must have spoken to Mom because although she made me apologize, she was kinder than before. I obediently complied, hoping it would restore the love she once showed me. She often reminded me, "Lily was sickly when young. You're 2 years older. You should care for her." I endured it. As the semester neared its end, Lily and I managed to coexist without issues. That day, I returned home right after receiving my exam results, and my little sister was already there. I had ranked second in my class and was eager for my parents to return from work and be proud of me. Lily was crying, and I could immediately tell she had done poorly on her test. Her grades had always been below average. A few years ago, Mom was more concerned about her health, so she didn't push her academically. Now, she couldn't catch up. I didn't comfort her. We weren't that close yet. Mom arrived before Dad. When she walked in, Lily was still sobbing. I didn't get a chance to discuss my own results before Mom's expression changed. She walked straight over to me, slapped me, and embraced Lily. My face stung, and my head was spinning. There she was, yelling at me. "Becky, are you bullying Lily again?" This was the second time she slapped me because of my sister. I still remember how it felt, like a bucket of ice water being dumped over my head, only multiplied 1,000-fold, drowning me in a dark abyss. I felt suffocated, on the brink of drowning. I covered my ears and crouched down, trying to block out everything Mom was saying. I don't know how long I remained like that until Dad arrived home. I looked up, seeing him as my only hope. Holding back tears, I said slowly and clearly, "Dad, I didn't bully my sister. She's crying because she didn't do well on her exam. Please believe me." My voice trembled with fear. In that moment, I realized that in Mom's heart, Lily was the one she truly cared about, and I felt invisible. Dad pulled me up and asked Lily what had happened. She seemed too scared by Mom's slapping and yelling to speak. After a while, she finally said, "I didn't say Becky bullied me. I'm crying because I failed math." Hearing that, I burst into uncontrollable tears. Dad yelled angrily at Mom, "Why can't you figure it out before you hit someone?" Mom's face turned red. Lily was crying intensely, and Mom didn't even comfort her. Is that what a sister does? Was I wrong to hit her? Lily's weak. Dad remained silent. He sighed, took me to the kitchen, and handed me an ice pack for my face. "Becky, don't be mad at your mom. She feels guilty because Lily's health problems seem like her fault. Lily has faced many close calls, and it really scared your mom, so she worries about her more. I hope you understand." I kept my head down and asked, "Dad, what about you? Why didn't you stand up to Mom?" He paused, then sighed slightly. "I've been away for a few years, and your mom has been handling things on her own. I feel like I owe her a lot, so I usually go along with her. Becky, I'm sorry you had to go through this." I bit my lip and continued questioning. "Dad, who do you like more? Me or Lily?" His voice softened. "Of course I like you, Becky. You're so mature. I'll take you to KFC tomorrow, okay?" "Are you bringing it for me or for both of us? If it's for me and Lily sees it, can I not share with her? And why don't you ask me how I did on my exam?" "Because she did poorly. You know I did well, so you can't mention it, right? Mom has already hit me twice because of her. She's wrong every time. But you guys never ask her to apologize to me." I slowly lifted my eyes to look at him. Why is it that in this family, all that matters is Lily's happiness? Why can't you see when I'm not happy? Why was I even born if this is how things are? Why do I have to pay the price for your debts to each other? Dad was stunned by my words. The kitchen was dimly lit, and I was crying so hard that my eyes hurt, obscuring his expression. After a long pause, he reached over, gently stroking my hair, and said, "Becky, you're still a kid. In our hearts, both you and Lily are our beloved daughters. It's just that Lily has endured so much pain being sick. That's why your mom shows more concern for her. and I tend to consider her feelings more often. I'm sorry for hurting you. When you grow up and have your own children, you'll understand. I didn't say anything else. I simply moved his hand away and quietly walked out of the kitchen, hearing him sigh behind me. But I didn't care anymore. I wouldn't understand, wouldn't ever understand, and wouldn't want to understand. The house felt cold and I shivered. This home would never feel warm to me again. It was only later that I recognized my feelings as despair. My phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Mike calling, and I answered immediately. Hey, what's up? Mike sounded both amused and exasperated. Your mom called me saying you stormed out in anger. I was even more annoyed. Did she blame you again for leading me astray? Mike laughed it off. In one ear and out the other, you know me. I'm just wondering why you're so upset today. Jason chimed in nearby. You're usually so sweet. Why are you mad? I remained silent for a while before hesitantly responding. I'm a few days late on my period. I went to the hospital this morning and I'm a month pregnant. There was silence on his end. Then suddenly, his excitement erupted. He hung up and immediately sent a video call. In the video, he and Jason were wearing matching outfits, grinning like fools. I'm gonna be a big brother, Jason shouted, arms raised triumphantly. I sighed and said, this was unexpected. I haven't decided yet, I replied. Mike interjected, an unexpected event is still destiny. Let's just go with it. Looks like we're meant to have a second child. I regretted mentioning the pregnancy before I had made up my mind. But we've had a strong marriage over the years, and I couldn't keep secrets or make decisions alone. I noticed my face showed some reaction, causing Mike to become a bit tense. Babe, are you feeling okay? Should I cut the trip short and come back to take care of you? Little Jason was mimicking a nod. Go home, go home. I couldn't help but laugh. Well, you guys might want to give a heads up to your sister-in-law, considering it's a family trip. Mike's family is different from mine. He and his sister are really close. Her kid is just 2 years younger than Jason, so every summer we plan outings together. This year, I'm skipping the trip because it's Mom's 50th birthday. I sighed. I'm not against having another child. Jason is always envious of others who have siblings. He often feels lonely. But personally, I'm scared I won't be a fair mom. Childhood trauma has affected me deeply. Ever since that talk with Dad at home, I've become really quiet. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I avoid conversations. Even when my sister tried to chat with me in our shared room, I'd shut her down quickly, leaving her no chance. At the dinner table, Dad would try to start conversations, but I'd eat in silence. And Mom, while I kept my distance, always wore that look, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. I'd back off, and she'd immediately become cold. One day, with Lily not around, the table was suddenly filled with KFC boxes. Wings, fries, nuggets, you name it. Mom's smiling for once. We got these just for you. Dig in. For me, little did they know, I had grown to despise KFC. I picked up a fry, but only held it, eyeing them suspiciously. Dad chuckled. Lily's about to start middle school. You know how her grades are. We'd like you to help her out with studying. I dropped the fry as if it had burned me and pulled a paper from my bag. I can't. I applied for dorms. Dad looked shocked. We live near the school. Why dorms? Without batting an eye, I replied, night classes mean I'm out till 9. It's dark. Who'll pick me up? Silence ensued. Dad glanced at Mom, hoping she'd say something, but she remained silent. I knew how this would unfold. Dad was always busy with work, making it impractical for him to pick me up, and Mom, no way she'd leave her favorite child alone for me. Dad sighed and gave his usual response. So what about summer? Winter? Surely you can help Lily then. Mom could talk now. The thing is, I wouldn't be free even during breaks. School roped me into math competitions. Classes over holidays were a must. Truth is, I fought for all that myself with the school. I needed to keep my distance from home for my own sanity. Nobody knew that after the second time Mom slapped me, I couldn't sleep at night. My hair fell out in clumps, and all I did was wonder why. Why care for the sick or struggling Lily, and brush off healthy, smart Becky? Is weakness what gets you love? Should I be sick too? Sometimes I imagined a scenario where if I were gravely ill, on the brink of death, maybe mom would remember her first little sweetheart. Maybe she'd love me like she did Lily. I obsessed over this in class between classes, my grades plummeted, and mentally I was drifting. Luckily, my teacher noticed and spent a long time talking to me. She hugged me at the end saying, "Becky, you're my best student. Every parent wishes for a daughter like you. Let me be clear, your parents handle things between you and your sister all wrong. But it's tough changing their mindset. They think they love you, that you're ungrateful. I'm telling you, don't let their mistakes define your self-worth. Don't chase love that isn't yours, be it family, friends, or future relationships. Take it as destiny. Focus on independence. Excel as a student. Get ready to carve out your world. When the time's right, true love will find its way to you. Even if it doesn't, you'll have a career and income to be proud of and won't lack compared to anyone else." I truly listened. The next 2 years of middle school had me hustling nonstop. Academic work and competitions filled my schedule. Most weekends, I'd stay away from home unless my wallet begged me. Holidays were spent at the library. I'd stay until closing if there were no classes. During those 2 years, meals at home became rare. The more ghosts like me lingered at home, the more sullenly my parents stared. "Why isn't Lily here?" Lily would complain. With a smile, I'd respond, "Hey, it works out." No fighting over the room. She'd purse her lips, staying silent. I had an unspoken thought too. I'm not even competing for our parents' attention. Maybe my aloofness was too obvious. After getting into my dream high school, my parents insisted I stay home. No more dorms. I couldn't win that battle, so I'd return each day. At home, having a personal space was just a fantasy. Conversations erupted out of nowhere. Mom and Dad would chat during meals, mostly about grades, their only relatable topic as high schoolers. Back in middle school, I was always at the top of my class, winning awards. But when I entered high school, I became more low-key. I gave up competitions to focus on academics. But with so many talented students in a good school, even staying in the top 10 wasn't easy. The same topics resurfaced repeatedly. Dad would make dry remarks. "That's still impressive." Mom would hint, "Since you're not competing, maybe help the family more." I'd just keep eating, pretending not to hear that she wanted me to tutor Lily. Maybe I was too independent in middle school. It felt like my parents had lost a sense of control over me. Now they hesitated to ask me for anything, especially when it concerned Lily. And my sister, perhaps because she's hit puberty, didn't want to talk to our parents much but clung to me like glue. "Sis, my classmate got scolded by the teacher today." Or, "Sis, should I wear my ponytail high or low?" And, "Sis, I can't solve this problem. Help me out." I'd reply occasionally, or she'd never stop pestering. Dad would beam at us saying, "They're thick as thieves, these two sisters." Mom, however, would respond coldly, "Lily is sticking to Becky, but you're just brushing her off. Can't you treat your sister better?" I took a deep breath and walked away thinking, if you can't change them, it's better to keep your distance. By the time I graduated high school, my family and I had a lukewarm relationship. After working hard for 3 years, I got into a university hundreds of miles away. My parents were thrilled and bragged to relatives. No one knew my biggest motivation was to study out of town where they couldn't constantly monitor me. After graduation, I insisted on working away from home and refused to return. My sister eventually enrolled in a local college and secured a job nearby. We both got married, she to mom's friend's son, and me to my college classmate, Mike, in Shanghai. My parents were unhappy with my marriage but couldn't do much. They kept finding excuses for me to visit. Recently, when mom fell ill and needed surgery, they expected me to take care of her. I complied, paying and being present around the clock before and after the surgery. My sister only showed up on the day of the operation. Dad reassured her, "Becky's here, she'll handle it." Lily felt a bit guilty, but left. Dad explained, "Lily's daughter inherited her fragile health. She needs Lily." "Sorry to trouble you," I simply asked. "What about her husband and in-laws?" Lying in bed, Mom became upset. "How could others compare to Mom's hardships? I know you'd feel unfair about caring for me alone. Think about it. You've always been healthier and brighter than your sister. How's that fair?" I didn't respond, just peeled an apple. "It's okay, don't say more." Dad signaled Mom to stop talking. "You need rest," he urged. I placed the apple on the table and calmly said, "I've used all my 10 days of vacation. My boss won't approve more leave." The doctor says you're recovering well and won't need constant care. I'm hiring a private nurse. If you're not satisfied, maybe ask your other daughter if being a mom means neglecting daughter duties. Then I walked out. Mom's voice echoed, heartless. She took a month off for her mother-in-law but gave up on Mom after a few days. I sneered. How is that the same? Mike and I had Jason, and in our second year of marriage, my parents briefly visited the hospital, gave a 50 yuan red envelope, and then left in a hurry. I was still bedridden from a C-section and asked, weren't you going to help me during the recovery? Dad awkwardly explained, Lily's daughter had a bad cough and Mom was worried. Sorry, your husband must handle things here. Mike, a genuine guy, quickly assured me, don't worry, I'll take care of Becky. I was furious. When I wanted to hire a postpartum nanny, they refused, saying it had to be family. Otherwise, we'd be gossiped about. After relentless calls from them and not liking strangers at home, I agreed. But because of Lily's child, I was once again abandoned. Lily is more important. Her child more valuable than mine. I smirked, swallowed my tears, and closed my eyes to rest. Luckily, Mike's mother rushed to help without hesitation. Becky, relax. I took care of my daughter's postpartum recovery, and they were hale and hearty. She stayed with us for over 2 years, and we developed a great relationship. When Jason started preschool, she returned home. Last year, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Mike and I brought her back to Shanghai for treatment, giving her our all. In my heart, she was worth the effort. As for Mom, caring for her felt like repaying a debt. She often reminded me how she nursed me through a severe illness before I was 3. She repeated it frequently, emphasizing how good she was to me. With this, the debt was finally settled. After a video call with Mike, I turned off my phone. I didn't attend Mom's birthday party. When Mike returned home, I confessed my worries. I haven't told you much about my family because I didn't know how. They never mistreated me, and they weren't stingy, but I just feel unhappy, like I've always gotten the short end of the stick. I don't know if I'm asking for too much. Mike reached over and hugged me. You just wish that if your parents only had one piece of candy, they'd give it to you sometimes and not always to your sister. But they think it should always go to her because you're the older one, so you should give way. Your heart has never been really satisfied. I sniffled, knowing he was right. It was exactly how I felt. Do you know how things work in my family? He asked. I shook my head. If we only had one piece of candy, my parents would always give it to my sister and let her decide how to divide it. As long as she provided a reason, even if she took it all for herself, they accepted it. Most of the time, she'd split it with me. But if she said, today you weren't here and I fed your brother, she got to keep it as her reward for looking after me. My parents thought that was fair. It wasn't her job to look after me. Her effort was recognized and rewarded. So as we grew up, Lily understood that being nice to me brought praise and rewards from our parents. And I learned that her kindness wasn't an obligation. I needed to thank her and reward her. Over time, her kindness became habitual, and I took over from my parents, giving her the same recognition. That's why we've always remained close. Between siblings, there's equality. No one should be forced to sacrifice for the other or do all the giving. The way your parents handled it was wrong. Trust me, we'll do better than them. 3 months later, I saw my parents and Lily again. I had been refusing their calls and hadn't replied to any messages from relatives. They traveled all the way to Shanghai, seeking answers. Calmly, I told them, I thought you understood. I've paid back everything I owe you. When you're old, I'll fulfill my legal obligations as your daughter. But that's it. Dad was stunned. Looking at me in disbelief, Mom clutched her chest in shock, unable to speak for a moment. Lily jumped in, demanding, How can you say that, sis? To her, I simply told her not to even start. Mom finally managed to ask with shaky hands, What do you mean? I pulled out a notebook with curled edges from under the coffee table. It listed all the money my family had spent on me from middle school to college. For expenses before then, I added 10,000 yuan because it wouldn't be less than that. I contributed 30,000 yuan when the house was remodeled and another 10,000 yuan when Dad wanted help buying a car. I also paid for Mom's 3,500 yuan medical bill. Unless I'm mistaken, Lily didn't contribute a cent to any of these expenses. Panicking, my sister looked away. Since having the baby, I haven't worked and don't have money to help, she said. I ignored her. Mom opened her mouth to speak, but didn't. Including the money for birthday gifts each year, it balanced out all the costs. Oh, and I still owe $1,000. The envelope I grabbed back. I'll transfer it to you in a bit. From college onwards, every time it was Mom and Dad's birthdays, I would arrange everything, balancing out the birthdays they set up for me. Both Mom and I had major illnesses once. We had taken care of each other. So that's evened out too. If you think there's something I missed, let me know and I'll settle it quickly. Dad's eyes turned red. Becky? Is that all we mean to you? I stared back at him. What else? I handled school myself. Even for tutoring, I arranged everything on my own. In elementary school, you left me at Grandma's, visiting once a month. Throughout middle and high school, you never dropped me off or picked me up. Buying clothes, Mom only took Lily out. And I just wore whatever was handed to me, other than working or listening to Mom and spending time with Lily. Did you ever do anything else for me? Everything from you was just, Becky is the older one and independent, as if that justified everything. All your attention was on Lily, even on my birthdays, choosing cakes she liked. You'd buy her an extra gift just to keep her happy, so why shouldn't she take care of you in your old age? Why come to me? I heard the sharpness in my voice, the pent-up resentment spilling over. Defeated, Dad covered his face, mumbling, I really didn't know you hated us for this. Mom glared at me with tears in her eyes. Are these little things really worth such resentment? I locked eyes with her and replied, yes, they are. During the years I needed love the most, you gave most of it to Lily, just leaving me scraps and insisting it was because I was the older sibling. You have no idea how much I hated being Lily's sister, how miserable I was, so miserable I was on the verge of depression, almost to the point of ending it all. Yes, my teacher found me dazed on the rooftop. If she'd been a moment later, who knows if I would have jumped. Mom looked at me, terror-stricken. I was sure she saw true hatred in my eyes. In the end, she crumbled, collapsing onto the sofa. 9 months later, I had a daughter, and Mike was overjoyed, wanting to see his little sister every day. I asked him, she's too little and needs me more, so I'll have less time for you. Are you okay with that? Jason blinked, curling up in my arms. I was a tiny bit upset. He showed just a tiny pinch with his fingers. What would you want as compensation? He thought for a while. What would you want as compensation? I waited patiently. If Dad can play Legos with me for a bit every day and Mom can tell me one more story each day, then I won't be upset. I laughed. Why's that? He gave me a knowing look, like I'd asked a really silly question. Because those things are just for Jason. My sister doesn't get them. You love her and you love me. Tears filled my eyes, and I finally understood how to be the mother of 2 kids. When you give a child their own piece of candy, it's like giving them a special kind of love. I want to give each of my kids enough love. Asterisk, asterisk. Epilogue, asterisk, asterisk. On the train ride back, the 3 of them didn't speak. Dad's eyes were red, staring silently out the window at the passing scenery. Mom occasionally muttered to herself, it's like all the effort raising this daughter was for nothing. Lily didn't dare say a word. She knew her sister was right. She was benefiting from it all. The phone on the table lit up with messages from Mom. Lily had indeed sent over 10,000 yuan, with a note saying, we're done. Mom's face turned pale as she picked up the phone, her hands trembling as she tried to think of a reply, but then she simply put it down. She suddenly asked Dad, why does she hate me so much? I only hit her twice. Does she have to hate me for life? It took Dad a long time to respond. He turned to look at Mom and said, Becky once asked me if Lily being sick was something she had to pay for. You working so hard, all alone, to take care of Lily, that's something I owe you. She already agreed to go live at Grandma's for 6 years. So why is it that when she comes home, she still has to pay for everything? Mom mumbled to herself, then went on the defensive. What price is she paying? I didn't deprive her of food or clothing. What wrong did I do to her? Dad's glare was cold. He said, even when you're raising a cat or a dog, just feeding and clothing, it isn't enough, let alone a child. You always only cared about Lily. Has it crossed your mind how Becky must have felt? When she was still in middle school and hadn't started boarding, there was a massive downpour. You only went to pick up Lily, and Becky had to run all the way home in the rain. She fell on the way, but when she got home, you only cared about how Lily got a little wet and didn't even look at Becky. I was the one who noticed later that her knees were scraped and bloody. Do you have any idea how upset she was? I talked to you so many times about being fair, but you never managed to do it. Lily's past the age of getting sick all the time. You don't have to fret over her so much. Becky is also our daughter and needs parents' attention, but you never listened. Mom laughed bitterly. Don't act like it's all my fault. If I failed, how much attention did you show her? You say you want to be fair, but if I didn't take her to KFC or didn't shop with her, couldn't you? Besides talking down to me, what else can you do as a dad? Their voices grew louder, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. Lily felt embarrassed and quickly urged them, "Don't fight on the train." Mom's bloodshot eyes turned to her. "If it weren't for you always provoking and accusing your sister, why would I have hit her?" Lily was shocked and felt hurt. "Mom, how could you say that about me?" Mom snorted. "Don't think I don't know. That time you cried until I got home. You were just trying to stir things up and make me think your sister bullied you. So I wouldn't scold you for your bad grades. At such a young age, you already know how to hurt people. When you grow up, you won't care about your parents. I've been sick for so long, and you've only visited me once. I was so good to you." Lily felt even more wronged. "Dad said with your sister around, it would be enough." Dad quietly added, "I was just being polite. You actually believed it. Your sister took care of Mom day and night for 10 days, while you just showed up right before the surgery and never came back until she was discharged. Compared to your sister, do you even have a conscience?" Lily wanted to argue, but Mom, seemingly insane, started yelling at her. "Don't drag your daughter into this. You don't work just to slack off. You don't even take care of your own daughter. Always out playing mahjong. When she's sick and goes to the hospital, I'm the one who's there. I didn't even look after Becky during her confinement month. Are you proud of yourself? Are you even human?" Lily, now angry, shouted back. "It's not my fault you favored me over my sister. I didn't make you babysit my daughter. You chose to play favorites. Now, since my sister isn't talking to you anymore, you blame it all on me. In your eyes, you've never done anything wrong." A sudden slap landed across Lily's face from her mom. She couldn't believe it. The person who had spoiled her all her life had actually hit her. Instinctively, she turned to look at Dad, who just frowned, and then turned his face back to the window, as if everything before him was disgusting. Lily felt terrified. Without your sister, could this really be a home anymore? Even though her sister rarely came home, she'd always answered their needs. She paid for house renovations, bought the car. When Mom was sick, she took care of both the expenses and Mom. Mom and Dad had even said that since her sister was making money in Shanghai, they'd rely on her financially. Because of her sister, Lily had always felt superior in her in-laws' eyes. She had once proudly thought that all the family assets would eventually be hers since her sister wouldn't return. But now, her sister said everything she'd done was to tie up the loose ends of family obligations, and with those ties severed, she'd no longer care for them. Does that mean your parents would become your responsibility now? In disbelief, she looked at her indifferent dad and seemingly deranged mom. They had long been unemployed, living off a meager pension, and the occasional generous red envelopes her sister would send. Without your sister, you'd be the next target to be leeched off. Yet you have nothing, not even the ability to support yourself. You can imagine the chaos to come. She shivered, holding herself tightly. Epilogue. 2 I understand that economics is the foundation of marriage, but I never anticipated that my decision to sever ties with my original family and stop providing financial support would lead to my parents and sister all getting divorced. They're all adults with hands and feet but act like oversized babies. The reason my parents got divorced was quite practical. Grandma was elderly, with bad legs and numerous ailments, needing someone to care for her. Dad, being the only son, naturally had to take care of her in her old age. But Dad only had a small pension and couldn't afford to hire help. He refused to work and spent all day lying at home watching TV. He decided to bring Grandma home to be cared for by Mom before even discussing it. Mom harbored a lifelong grudge because Grandma favored boys over girls and had refused to look after my sister back in the day. So she wouldn't serve Grandma. Dad got furious. He blamed her for being biased, saying, if Becky were around, we could afford a nanny. But since I wasn't there to help, Mom had to take responsibility. Mom wasn't having it. She told him, I'm your mother. You take care of her. They started arguing, both likely going through menopause, and the fight escalated to violence. In a fit of rage, Mom smashed a vase over Dad's head. Dad was extremely unlucky and was hit in a vulnerable spot. He spent 20 days in the ICU and came out paralyzed on one side. Dad was enraged, slurring his words, trembling, and demanding a divorce and to press charges against Mom. My sister was shuttling between the hospital and the detention center, nearly driven insane by their antics. She couldn't just stand by. Everyone back home knew about them, and as their daughter, she received a lot of criticism for not stepping up. Sis, I know I don't have the right to call you, but with Mom and Dad like this, please have a heart and help me. She eventually broke down, obtaining my new contact information through some connections. I replied coolly, sorry, Mike and I are currently in the States for our studies, not planning to return. I can't help you. This situation is entirely Mom and Dad's choice. You're their beloved daughter. Whatever happens, handle it as you see fit. My sister broke down, sobbing on the phone. Grandma was still at home, and no one was looking after her. Dad's treatment cost a fortune. We even sold the car. My mother-in-law heard about our mess and is forcing me to divorce her son. Sis, I'm begging you, help me. I didn't want to hear anymore and hung up. Years later, Mike and I returned to Shanghai with our son and happened to run into someone from back home. When I mentioned my parents, he sighed heavily. Your dad insisted on suing your mom and wouldn't sign a letter of forgiveness. Because of his serious injuries, your mom was sentenced to 1.5 years. They divorced while she was in prison. Your dad and grandma were cared for by your sister. She got divorced too because she had no job, and the burden at home was heavy. The kid was given to her ex. She doesn't work either, just gets by on your dad's meager pension. Besides providing food, she ignores everything else. The elderly couldn't handle it and passed away within 1 year. Without financial support, she had to reluctantly get a job. When your mom got out of prison, she was mentally unstable. She'd sit in the corner babbling, "Why hasn't Becky come home yet?" Then she just disappeared, and no one's seen her since. After hearing all that, I was silent for a long time, feeling a dull ache in my heart. Suddenly, a childhood memory flashed through my mind from a night when my sister hadn't been born yet. Dad and Mom held little me by the desk. Dad wrote a word on a piece of paper, smiling as he looked at us. Mom pointed to it gently, saying, "Becky, this word reads home. Where there's Dad, Mom, and Becky, that's our home." A single tear quietly fell. That once joyful home blurred and eventually disappeared.